5. Hello, everybody. I think everyone can hear me. I think the AV is all good. Yeah. What's up, YouTube? I'm gonna wait a little bit, let everyone kind of pull up, take a little bit of time. I'm excited for this mozzarella cheese. Again. Also brought the kimchi out. It's gonna be different. So I think I'm gonna wait until probably 6:05 to start. People are coming on. We can kind of get going on, kind of want to introduce it, like introduce this dish, kind of the context, the history behind it. Talk a little bit about the concepts that we're going to be going through, as well as the sort of overview of what we're doing operationally, just to give us some structure. If you haven't already, you should put some beers in the freezer. Beers and soju, put it in the freezer, just so it's cold enough for either, hopefully you already had some in the fridge or freezer, but just so that it's cold enough for when we actually have the bubbling, spicy pot of goodness in front of us and we want something cold to wash it down. A trick I learned is to wrap a bottle in a wet paper towel. I think this basically increases the contact of like water conducts heat better than air, so it wraps it in a bunch of cold water, more quickly cools it down. But anyways, beer, soju, freezer, fridge, get it cold. Saranka, I'm glad you put in the effort. It's going to be worth it. Plus gochujang is just a great ingredient anyways. Trent, how spicy is very hot gochujang? I don't know. I honestly don't know. I use mild and it's not really that spicy. Yeah, I'm not really sure. That's a very subjective thing in my experience. I can't really answer for other people in terms of their spice tolerance, but I don't know, like the multiplier or something, for like how much spicier it is. It'd be cool to get a kind of like a roll call of people popping in the chat and just saying if they're here and if they're making it with us or whatever. I think I'm gonna kind of start right now. So hey, welcome everybody. I'm excited for another installment of, I don't know, I guess my Let's Cook series, right? My cook along, my newsletter. I'm super excited for this one because yeah, this dish is just really good. It's just really, really good, and it works really, really well with alcohol, and it has interesting stories behind it. So I'm super excited. It's gonna teach us a lot of things. One thing I definitely want to communicate is the historical and cultural context of this dish. I also want to kind of hammer in those core fundamental concepts that feed into why this dish really works. So this dish does a really good job at a lot of things, and some of those things that I want to highlight are balance. This dish is really well balanced texturally and in a flavor sense. There's a lot of natural sugars in this dish. That's something else that I want to kind of focus on. And like besides that, there's a lot of complexity going on as well. There's a lot of complexity in terms of flavors, in terms of depth of flavor. There's a lot going on. So I kind of want to focus on those things, and other things will pop up as we're going through the recipe. And the overarching sort of concept behind this is like, this is a really, really, really good drinking food. In Korea, if you go to a spot like Yugane or one of the other chains, or just generally the Dak-galbi spots, there will be a lot of alcohol, and this is a really good platform for you to just like down alcohol. So Dak-galbi originated in bars in this place called Chuncheon, and in Chuncheon there was basically like a lot of char grilled meats. This gui, it's grilled in Korean, and a lot of people apparently, like at some point, someone in the outskirts of Chuncheon like brought up and started doing stir-fried meat instead of charcoal grilled meat, and this was slightly cheaper, and it caught on. So there's like this meal sort of emerged and developed. This cheap, delicious, filling meal developed, and actually it was called like the commoner's food, or commoner's kalbi, which means ribs, even though there are no ribs in this dish. And it also was called the university student's kalbi. So this is like a very much a people's dish. It's just like, I don't know, cheap, filling, delicious, really good for drinking. South Korean, and I'm just Koreans in general like drinking. It's a core part of the cuisine, actually. Like there's entire food groups dedicated to eating while drinking. Anju is like the sort of categorization. So you might be kind of like curious about why there's cheese, why there's some mozzarella cheese. This is definitely an interesting point. Cheese is pretty big in Korea, especially eating cheese with, there's a lot of spicy food that has cheese in it. Cheese was sort of brought over in a sense. There was the Americans bringing over their imperialism and their American cheese. So there's kind of some sharing there, because of the rations that were being given as aid had a lot of American cheese in it. So that's why you see a lot of American cheese in Korean culture, because it caught on. People liked it. And also mozzarella cheese is pretty popular. There's this city called Imsil, and in Imsil there was this Belgian monk who, I think in the 60s, came over and basically introduced, he started a mountain goat farm. He started goat farming. He got the dairy from these goats, and he just started traveling back and forth to Italy, France, and Belgium to basically understand how to make cheese. So he learned how to make cheese. He brought that industry back. He trained people around. They started this massive business that today is now has like 70 different chains, branches of the same like Imsil cheese pizza chain, and like 20 different subsidiary companies, something wild. So Koreans definitely have developed a taste for cheese. That's kind of the extent of my knowledge on the topic. So let's kind of dive into this. There's a lot of like ingredients that we have to prep, but this is actually a very simple preparation. It just takes one pan. Only takes one pan, super simple. So, and kind of as we go through, feel free to ask any questions, about the food, about the dish, about its history. I'll try to answer anything I can. And also, like, if you fall behind, don't worry. I'm going to try to like have some moments to catch up and talk about what's going on, as well as kind of check in with you all. If you all think I'm going too fast, let me know. I know I tend to go fast. So like I said, let's get started. Jake is here with me today. He's
question vessel.
Yeah, he's the question vessel. He's gonna be reading to me, so you guys can like speak through him vicariously, and also I'm sure he'll have his own questions.
And I don't know if I should be offended that Ben waited until the cheap, easy to make drinking dish to invite me on the stream, but I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, so he's
also let me know if I need to talk into Ben's microphone.
Yeah, I think that's good. I think that's good. Yeah. So he'll also be eating and drinking with us, so that'll be great. I needed a drinking and eating buddy always. So I'm going to. Yeah, I also did want to interestingly, I wanted to use this platform a bit just to kind of my brother called me earlier this evening and was hitting me up and was kind of brought up the point of, if you don't already know, now you know there was an attack by a domestic terrorist on a lot of, I think it was in a little bit outside of Atlanta, a lot of massage parlors, massage businesses. And I felt like it probably wouldn't make sense just to brush over that and act like it didn't happen today. So I would say that's a pretty rough topic, obviously. And instead of just ignoring it, I wanted to bring it up and make sure that we're kind of thinking about it, talking about it a little bit. I know this is probably not the best platform for that, but I felt like I needed to bring it up. We do need to take an active role in stopping hate in our communities, and that's something, I don't know. This is a small platform that I have, but I feel like it's important to say that. As we cook things, as we're trying to appreciate these cultures, I think it's super interesting personally to be confronting thoughts that I have about, well, what is it about, let's say, doenjang that I don't like or something like that. It's good to interrogate yourself and experiment with these things and understand your prejudices. Try to question, even through food. If you appreciate some food and not others, just try to question that, push that a little bit. I think that's what I have to add to that conversation. There are a lot of other voices who can much better talk about this, but wanted to bring it up. With that being said, I want to jump into it. So, let's kind of get set up, get prepped like we always do, right? Get all of your ingredients out. I'm going to do kind of a run through of all my ingredients, everything that's listed, and I'm going to start kind of showing what we're going to be doing. Wash your hands. Always wash your hands first, and then get all of your ingredients ready to go. Kind of get your bowls out. Bowls are so useful they're really, really useful for organizing your workspace and just having things go a lot smoother. Excuse me. So I'm going to give you this sort of view now. So we have all of our stuff out. So I'm going to do kind of a run through. So the core things here, cabbage. This is a massive cabbage. I'm not using all of this cabbage. If you have a cabbage this big, use less than a third of it. It's too much cabbage. It's too much cabbage. It's literally the size of my head. I think it's really big. I'm using probably a third of this, and I already cut a piece off.
What else can we do with the cabbage?
If you have leftover cabbage, you could make kimchi. There's a lot of really good recipes for kimchi on Mangchi's website. The recipe that I originally got this from. That's the other thing. Mangchi. The original recipe comes from someone named Emily Kim. She's a really prolific creator and YouTuber and author, and she has some really, really well tested, traditional and non-traditional Korean recipes. So super dope. She has a ton of stuff you can do with cabbage in the Korean sense, and in the Korean cuisine. You can, you could make sauerkraut. You could lacto ferment it with a 2 or 2.5% salt solution, or not solution, just 2.5% salt by weight. You could stew it with some pork and paprika. You could do so much with cabbage.
The other day, I also just broiled my cabbage.
Oh,
because
nice.
We've been doing so much broiling.
Yeah.
Just like cut it into steaks.
Yeah, it gets a little bit brown and like crispy on top.
Crispy, and then
yeah.
put like just sprinkled hoisin sauce on it, and that was it.
Nice.
And
that sounds really good.
Very, very simple.
Simple and delicious. Yeah. We're also gonna be working with carrot, sweet potato. Those are our two sort of more starchy vegetables, and we also have an onion here. So everybody, get your onion out. We have green onions. I use 2. You can use 1. This wasn't called for in the original recipe, but I like green onions. And they provide a good flavor and good color contrast as well. There's some green peppers here. That's going to be important. There's our rice cakes. If you don't have rice cakes, you can use udon noodles. You can use instant noodles. You can use sweet potato noodles. I would use rice cakes. I called for rice cakes. They have a great chewy texture. I love them so much. Kimchi as an add-on. If you want kimchi, if you want to add kimchi, if you want that flavor, if you like that, bust that out. It's really good. 2 super important ingredients in this dish: ginger and especially garlic. This is a super garlic heavy dish. You don't need it, but it definitely provides sort of an element to the whole flavor base. And then we have our chicken, right? We have our chicken thighs, or whatever you want to substitute. If you're vegan or vegetarian, you can use some like firm tofu, like almost like tempeh or seitan, or you can use mushrooms, something with texture, a meaty, more chewy texture. We have our perilla leaves here, which I don't expect most people to have. Maybe you substituted it with basil, maybe not. It's a kind of a hard to find thing. And then for our sauce type stuff, we have some light soy sauce. There is a light and there's a dark soy sauce. There are many different types of soy sauce. Get the light one.
Corey's asking about when we're going to be using the kimchi, or is it just primarily a side dish?
The kimchi is both a side dish and it goes into the stew. Yeah, so you can add the kimchi, chop it, add it into the stew as you cook it. You can also put it on the side as some like banchan.
Shane also sent a question ahead about
cool.
just using kimchi instead of cabbage.
Cool. Yeah.
I thought that was
Yeah. That was a good point. So Shane earlier asked if he could use kimchi instead of cabbage, and I actually kind of like that question because you can. Because that's the answer. It's like, yeah, you can. It's kind of up to you. Like, if you replaced the cabbage by weight with kimchi, you would have a very sour, funky, you would have a kimchi stew at that point. And that's a decision you can make, right? As a cook, you can make those decisions. You can make, maybe it's a bad decision, maybe it's a good one. I'm not going to say. That'd probably be delicious, honestly. But it would be something very different than Dak-galbi.
This is like when my mom, growing up, would make both jambalaya and gumbo. And like, for those that don't know, jambalaya is just like a super, super spiced rice with like sausage. And then gumbo is just like a spiced soup almost that you put over rice. So I would always ask her if I could just put the gumbo over the jambalaya rice, and she would like freak out.
Because it's just not allowed.
Yeah, because it's just not allowed, and then I would do it, and it was delicious, but it was so overpowering and so much.
Yeah.
That's just same vibe.
Yeah.
Like just using the kimchi.
Definitely. Yeah.
But you can do it.
Yeah, you can do something. I want to. Yeah. I'll keep going on these ingredients, and then I'll loop back around to that. This is rice syrup. You probably didn't find this or don't have it. If you did, cool, good, like A+. That's awesome. You can also use high fructose corn syrup, regular corn syrup, or just sugar to substitute it. I think we already talked about gochujang. And then, last but not least, this is a super important element in the dish: chili flakes. These are pretty mild, actually. These Tower red pepper powder. This is probably pretty old too. But you want chili flakes. This is important for the seasoning sauce. There's a lot of color compounds inside of the chili that dissolve into fat and some into water. That'll give this dish a really nice color. So keep that in mind. And then additionally, I have some lettuce because I love lettuce for the crunchy, cool sort of, it's a crunchy texture, it's cool temperature-wise, and it's really just watery. So it's a really nice balance to something super spicy and hot. This is really good. This is referred to as sam in Korean. Sam is kind of the herbs and lettuce leaves that you use to build your bite almost.
Shane's asking how to sub if he only has dark soy sauce. Have you gone over soy sauce yet?
Yeah, so if you only have dark soy sauce, so it's going to be a trade-off here. Dark soy sauce is actually, from what I understand, it's definitely used as a stain. It's used as a coloring, right? It's used as a coloring. It's used to stain dishes. So you're gonna necessarily, if you use dark soy sauce, it's gonna be a darker end product. Your broth will be a little bit darker, a little bit more brown. It won't be like, it'll be like reddish brown instead of like reddish orange probably. Dark soy sauce also I think is less intense actually in flavor than light soy sauce. The light and dark refers to the color, not the strength. So you have to use more dark soy sauce to achieve the same thing that light soy sauce would, but in doing so you'd end up with more dark color and browning the sort of broth. So it's kind of a trade-off that you have to make a call on basically. That's going to be your call.
How many types of soy sauce would you generally recommend people stay stocked with?
Yeah, that's a good question.
Because like in my house, one of my roommates has like 8 types of soy sauce, but that's because he was going through this like Thai cookbook called Pak Pak.
Yeah.
Which is, if you're trying to get into Thai cooking.
Yeah. Is that like Andy, whatever his name is?
I don't know.
Cool.
But yeah, he's got a lot of soy sauce.
Yeah. And
so I've seen lots of soy sauce, and I always just get Kiko Min's.
See, soy sauce usually, like, I like having light. I like having dark. Sometimes I like having mushroom soy sauce. It's mushroom flavored soy sauce. And then you can also get soy sauce specifically, like seasoning soy sauce. Mm-hmm. It's a little bit lighter, I think, and a bit sweeter. But don't quote me on that, because I'm not well researched on that. Different than a Maggi. Okay. Maggi is like a very different flavor profile even. Yeah. So I would say, like, I don't know, light and dark is probably fine for most applications, especially if you're cooking like basic stuff.
Okay.
Cool. So let's kind of break this down. This dish is, like, to make it, we have like 4 distinct steps. Step 1 is going to be marinating the chicken. We're going to do that at the beginning because we want to give enough time to the chicken and the soy sauce to kind of get friendly with each other and for the soy sauce flavor to absorb into the chicken. The second step that we're going to do is we're going to create the seasoning sauce. We want to mix that up, right? And we want to make sure that that's ready to go and ready for our stewing later. The third one is we want to prep our vegetables. We're going to be washing, peeling, cutting all of our vegetables up into pieces, and then layering them in the pan. This is a 1-pan dish. The fourth step is to cook it. And all of this should, like, if I weren't here, this should take around like 45 minutes to an hour, I think, for most people. I think it can go a lot faster depending on how quickly you execute it. I can do it in like, 20 to 30 minutes. Prepping is the main thing, and cooking takes some time. So cooking will take about, 15 to 20 minutes, probably more like 20 minutes. So let's get started on the marination part. So once again, if you haven't washed your hands already, wash your hands. Once we're gonna chop up the chicken into a little bit over an inch bite-sized pieces. I like them being like slightly bigger than a bite. It's just more fun that way, I think.
Would you recommend people marinate their chicken overnight?
Nah. It's not. Yeah, you can marinate your chicken overnight for this, but really, like, I don't know. I was talking about this with someone recently. There's a lot of first of all, there's a lot of things that I don't necessarily fully understand about marination, specifically with salt and acids over time. So, like, there are diminishing returns, for example, to marinating chicken in an acid for an extended period of time. In the beginning, it might loosen up a little bit, or in the middle it might loosen up a bit, but at some point it like tightens up again. So these proteins will coagulate and it'll get less tender. With salt marination, I think that the main thing that would happen is you would end up just more evenly seasoning the inside of the chicken, but really the chicken is going to be in pretty small pieces anyways, so it's going to be well coated with the sauce. There's plenty of surface area for the sauce to coat. We don't really have to be too crazy about that.
Okay.
So what I like to do is I like to use a different cutting board and even sometimes a different knife depending on how I'm feeling. But definitely a different cutting board for the chicken just so I don't have to clean my cutting board. Don't mind this, there's, compostable bags, like the branding, like actually just disintegrates because it's compostable. And for some reason, the place I shop at just puts meat in compostable bags. So let's chop up, let's chop up some of our chicken. I'm using, I think, chicken leg and thigh, it looks like. Breast would be okay for this. However, breast does have less fat in it and will be less forgiving if you cook it too much. So if you overcook breast, you're probably going to have a dry end product, as opposed to if you overcook thigh. Thigh is really like forgiving. If you overcook thigh, it's like not the end of the world. It probably still has enough fat content and connective tissue inside to sustain that sort of heat, and it'll still be tender.
How dry can it really get when we're cooking it in a soup, like a brothy?
It can get dry. Like,
it can still get dry?
Yeah, totally. So when something goes over a certain temperature, all of those proteins are gonna like tighten up and squeeze, and they're gonna push out a lot of water they have trapped, and they're gonna push out fat. The water is what we're really worried about. We want some fat to render out, but if you're doing it at if you're rolling boil over 212, or at around 200, 212 degrees, that's gonna overcook things, like almost always. So just because it's in water doesn't mean it'll stay moist.
Which is why you boil and then reduce heat to low and simmer.
Yeah, exactly. You get it up to a boil. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We're gonna be getting this up to a boil, and then we're gonna be covering it and lowering the heat to medium, and then we're gonna kind of do a quick braise, I would say. So this is kind of the size I'm doing for the chicken. It's pretty big. It's a little bit bigger than a bite. So I'm just cutting my chicken pieces up, all that stuff. Yeah, let me know if y'all are curious about cutting techniques. I haven't really talked about knife skills that much. Because I think they're important, but not as important for beginning, or just there are other things I want to focus on. I'm gonna clean my knife now because I'm done cutting my chicken. While you are all cutting your chicken, I can talk a little bit about what's going on here. So, okay, we have a couple of, why is this video so low quality? Interesting.
Looks pretty good to me.
Cool. What we're about to do is we're going to mix soy sauce. We're going to mix about a tablespoon of soy sauce with a pound of chicken thighs. That's what the recipe calls for. About a tablespoon of soy sauce with chicken thighs, and we're going to add a little bit of fresh cracked black pepper. Pepper, I can talk a lot about pepper, but that's less interesting for this dish. I'm going to talk more about chicken and soy sauce. So there's kind of this nerdy thing. I'm just throwing in about a tablespoon right now, tablespoon of light soy sauce into that. There's this kind of nerdy thing about umami, the flavor that people refer to as umami. Basically, soy sauce is a fermented soy product that I think the fungus or bacteria, Aspergillus, I think it is. Anyways, one of the main ones being used in soy sauce produces a lot of glutamic acid as a byproduct of the fermentation process. MSG, glutamic acid. It's an amino acid. It's like a protein building block. And that's what gives it that savory, like, yum flavor. So it's important to know that. It's also important to know that chicken has this thing called inosine in it, which this is kind of a nerdy take on this, but inosine, along with this other thing called guanylate, which are nucleic acids or nucleotides, blah blah blah. Basically, this thing, IMP, inosine, IMP, and guanylate, GMP. When MSG is in their presence, MSG's perception on your tongue can increase up to 1,500%. So 15 times, you'll be 15 times more sensitive to MSG in certain situations where IMP and GMP are around, which is kind of mind-blowing, right? Like, you can actually taste MSG 15 times more sensitively. That's wild. So chicken actually has a good amount of IMP in it, as do other meats. Shiitake mushrooms have a lot of GMP in them. So you can kind of see throughout different cuisines. There, especially like, I don't know, Japanese and Korean cuisine, you have these broths, the dashi broth and the basic like Korean broths with the small sardines. They're baby sardines, they're not anchovies. Baby sardines, kelp, and mushrooms. That's like a very common broth, both in Japanese and in Korean cooking that exists. That is like the holy trifecta, the like holy trinity of GMP, IMP, GMP in the mushrooms, IMP in the sardines, or with katsuobushi in Japanese cuisine, the smoked and dried tuna. And then you have the MSG from the kelp, the kombu, which is super, super interesting. Anyways, gonna continue on. So at this point, we should all have our chicken chopped with a little bit of soy sauce in it and a little bit of black pepper. And that's gonna be, we're gonna just set that to the side. We're done with that for now. That's just gonna be marinating while we do other things. Okay, so we have our chicken marinated. Now, what we're gonna do, what?
Did you wash your hands?
I did, but not explicitly. That's a good point. Yeah, wash your hands after you're done with the chicken. If you didn't already wash your knife and cutting board, wash that. Chicken has a lot of salmonella on it in the US specifically. We just do a really bad job, really bad job of keeping our livestock clean and healthy and treated well. So anyways, so what we're going to be doing here for the seasoning sauce is we're going to have our ginger, we're going to have our garlic, we're going to also have some gochujang, some rice syrup, corn syrup, or sugar, some chili powder, and some soy sauce. So that's kind of like what we're working with here. We also want half a cup of water. You can use, if you're crazy about flavor like I am, some chicken broth. So I would use some chicken broth powder in some water. That's how I like to do it. Sarenka. Yes. There's this thing called, what is it called? E65. Hold on. IMP, GMP, food additive. Yes. Okay. There is this flavor enhancer, profiled like a standardized flavor enhancer, called E630. And E630 is a mixture of disodium inosine, IMP, and disodium guanylate, GMP, and is often added to foods that already have MSG in them. So yes, this is used as a flavor enhancer. It's well known by the industry. People apply it everywhere. Yeah.
So it's like an XP boost.
Yeah, it's definitely like, it's a total intensifier. Totally intensifies the MSG taste. And I was eating some snacks the other day. There were these like crispy spicy ramen snacks. I was eating them, and I was just like, wow. I was so blown away by the flavor that was in them. And I just looked at the back, and this is a little bit after I'd learned about this crazy synergy. And I read, oh, the disodium inosine and disodium guanylate. Oh, and MSG, like they add, and then yeast extracts and hydrolyzed vegetable proteins. Whenever you see hydrolyzed vegetable proteins, that's just MSG goodness. Anyways.
Are there things that do the opposite?
Yeah, I guess technically like fat and water kind of like dampen flavors, like they neutralize flavors a bit, and you have to, like fat in itself is like very flavorful, but you have to bring that flavor out. If you just put way too much fat in something, you just have your palate coated by fat, and it would stick kind of.
So it's almost like a shield for flavor?
Yeah.
But different than like a chemical reaction of your body's interpretation
the opposite.
of the flavor.
I'm not sure about that. Okay. I'll think about that.
Is it like salt just bringing out the flavor of things? I mean, I'm trying to think of like any other parallel to the...
Something that does something similar or the opposite of?
Yeah. Something that like acts on the same mechanism of like
a
chemical basically multiplying or dividing the intensity of something?
Well, totally. So let's bring it back to this specific dish. The use of mozzarella cheese in this dish is actively balancing spicy peppers. Okay. The casein proteins in milk and cheese directly like latch on to capsaicin molecules and other molecules that are on your tongue hurting you and help wash them away. So you can use casein protein or cheese or milk. You can use cheese or milk to balance spiciness, just because you know that you can actually use this chemical to kind of block this intensity of something.
Got it.
Yeah. So some other questions. When you put the gochujang in, yes, I will explain. Corey, I got you. Shane, don't worry about gelatin. The gelatin isn't the point here. We're going to get it sticky with other things. It's going to be sticky with like sugar, natural sugars, not so natural sugars. It's going to be sticky regardless. Don't worry about that. It's more about the flavor that chicken broth brings. I just like the flavor.
Should we start drinking?
Yeah, if you have a beer or a soju, I'd suggest beer right now. We can do soju later. So I'm going to fill a cup of water up because we're going to need a cup. We're going to need half a cup right now for the seasoning sauce, and we're going to need half a cup later to help us cook. And I'll talk about that more later. Too much going on. Don't want to completely overwhelm everyone. Cool. I'm just throwing some in. Don't worry about mixing it up too much. We're going to boil it for many, many minutes. Don't worry about it. So, okay, I'm going to put my workspace a little bit more into array. So, first, let's prep garlic and ginger, right? So, this recipe calls for 12 cloves of garlic. I have slightly less chicken. Oh, no, yeah, we're doing 12 cloves of garlic. Yeah, whatever. I'm just eyeballing. I'm just a handful of garlic for me, and I have pretty big hands. So ginger is the other thing. Ginger, honestly, for this application, you won't need to peel the ginger. It's edible, it's fine. What I would recommend is if you have any dry spots, I would cut those out because that's just a bad texture. So I'm just gonna cut out my dry piece of ginger, but that's it. Also, as a little interlude, it's pretty useful to have just a bowl around lined with a compost bag or just a bowl just to kind of get your scraps. It just makes your cleanup easier. Anything to make your cleanup easier is going to surprisingly help you just be less stressed about cooking and just more excited to cook. Like, it's not this big deal anymore when you have organization and when you clean as you go. That's, me cleaning my knife and cleaning my cutting board and all this stuff. It's important. So let's start with the ginger. There are many ways to prep ginger. You can smash the ginger first and then mince it. The smashing kind of does some of the mincing for you. You can just chop it all. You can grate the ginger if you want, using a microplane. It's really up to you. There are differences, though, in grating and chopping and smashing. If you think about it, there are all of these cells, and I kind of talked about this in my baba ganoush kind of walkthrough as well. But there are a bunch of these cells inside of ginger and in garlic, but let's talk about ginger. There's a bunch of cells in the ginger that are holding juices and aromatic compounds. When you smash them and crush them and grate them, a lot of those are being released. When you're mincing them, less of them are being released, and it's going to be a slower sort of release into the broth. Garlic is a whole different story. I'll talk about that later. So let's chop up our ginger. And Lusana, you said you wanted to talk about, you kind of wanted to ask about You wanted to ask about knife skills. The way I like to cut things generally, and the way that is, I think, taught, is a pretty simple. There's a pretty simple approach where you create a claw, basically. You create a claw, so you're protecting your fingertips at all times. You're kind of like creating this claw. The claw is supposed to protect your fingertips. With a knife, you're able to just guide the knife with your knuckle. If you cut your knuckle off, that sucks, but it's a lot better than your fingertip. So that's the idea. You're using this little claw, and you can kind of cut in whichever way. You know, you can do back slice, forward slice, you can chop. That's the idea. So what I do is I actually crank. This is kind of I don't know. This is interesting. I think some people might be interested in this. You can kind of tilt your knuckle in order to get pretty consistent sizes. So as I do this, I can make one slice, tilt, make another slice, and see how consistent those two slices are in width. I can tilt again, another slice, tilt one more time. All right, and then I reset. And then I just, woo, there you go. So this is a rookie mistake, but I actually think I want to highlight it because I make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. You can see that. I just cut into my fingernail a little bit. Luckily, it's not my finger. Don't do what I did. Pay attention to where your thumb is, where your fingers are. Anyways, cool. So now I'm going to chop this up. Same sort of technique. At this point, I'm just mincing it. So I'm just mincing this ginger. And actually, you know, we should mince the garlic too. Why don't we just, with all this garlic, just start mincing it. Just roughly chop it. It doesn't matter.
Lily already peeled her ginger?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, it's totally fine. The situations I wouldn't peel my ginger in are the ones where the ginger is like aesthetically important. Like I'm gonna have chunks of ginger that I want to look clean and like maybe they want to be like, I want them to be in like diamond shape or something cool. Other situations are like when that would actually affect the texture. Like mostly in like maybe a stir fry, I wouldn't do that. It kind of depends though, honestly. Depends on how refined you want it to look, whatever that means. I generally just don't peel my ginger, or I'll cut a little bit off. I don't follow a rule, but you don't necessarily need to peel your ginger when you're stewing something or when you're braising something, and the ginger pieces are going to be really small. So I'm just gonna join my garlic and ginger together, and the idea is just to kind of make some chops one direction, gather your ingredients, and then like make them in a slightly different direction. That's the idea. You're just going over it repeatedly until you kind of reach a consistently small mince. And the reason why we're doing this is because, you know, we can just throw in pieces of ginger and garlic, but that would not aid as much in flavor sort of diffusion. We want to diffuse all of these flavorful elements into our sauce, and thus into our like sauce, and then following from that, you know, into the entire dish. Awesome. Cheers. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
So I think that like my minced garlic and ginger is finely minced at this point. It's
what
minced.
Is ginger skin?
What is ginger skin?
Yeah.
It's probably mostly cellulose, like what trees are made of. It's probably just like a really strong fibrous material. It's like edible enough. It's just so thin, and it doesn't have that much flavor. It's not gonna like really affect things, from what I understand. Yeah, so now let's kind of get our seasoning sauce. Yeah, there's so much garlic and ginger, as you see. There's just piles.
It's a mountain.
Yeah, Trent, lots of garlic, and Shane, the brotherhood of chopped finger boys. Cool. So I have this big ass mountain of, garlic and ginger. Wow, this is great. I love this, and I'm just gonna dump it in.
This reminds me of the fish, the bass.
Oh yeah. One time that was kind of not good, but like good. But
were you talking about the sesame oil?
I think we messed something up.
Well, yeah, we put all the Sichuan chip.
Yeah. So now we have our chopped up. Cheers, Lily. We have our chopped up garlic and ginger. The next elements we're going to be adding are our sort of sauces and our chili pepper powder. So I'm going to kind of wait up for everyone to work through their garlic and ginger, and in about a minute or two I can start talking about the other things. So right now we're about to put a few things in that kind of matter a lot for this dish. That these things all create the base flavor, like the flavor base, basically the base flavor that runs throughout this entire dish. It's gonna boil into the dish, and it's gonna create this like pretty consistent spiciness, sweetness, and like aromatic, garlicky, gingery goodness. It also these ingredients are going to provide a lot of that umami savoriness from both the soy sauce and the gochujang. So gochujang and soy sauce both share soybean fermentation in their production processes. So it's important to kind of understand that when you add gochujang to something, you're adding chilies. You're also adding some sugars because there's glutinous rice flour, like sticky rice flour, which saccharifies. Don't worry about what that word means, but basically the starch turns into sugar over time throughout the fermentation process. So you have some sugar in the gochujang, and you also have a lot of that glutamic acid we were talking about because there's some soybean paste in there as well. We already talked about soy sauce, lots of umami, lots of soy fermented glutamic acid deliciousness. And then there's just straight up sugar here. This is rice syrup. This is rice syrup. It's actually pretty mild in sweetness compared to something like high fructose corn syrup. High fructose corn syrup has a lot of fructose in it, whereas from what I understand, rice syrup has a lot of maltose in it, like maybe 40 or 50% maltose, and then a mixture of like fructose, glucose, and sucrose and other sugars. The reason why this matters is because something like brown rice syrup or rice syrup is going to be slightly less sweet. Maltose is about a third as sweet as table sugar. And for reference, lactose, the sugar that you see in milk, that you taste in milk, is about an eighth as sweet. A fifth as sweet. Someone fact check me on that.
Wait, lactose is a sugar?
Yeah, lactose is a milk sugar.
So if someone's lactose intolerant,
they can't digest that milk sugar.
They can't handle the sweet?
They can't handle the sugar, yeah. Their body can't digest, yeah. So, lactose is a sugar. So
So what makes a sugar a sugar?
The os.
The os?
The OSE. I think it has to do with the chemical compound structure.
Okay.
I actually couldn't tell you right now, but
any os is a sugar. Fructose, glucose.
Yeah, sucrose, maltose. Yeah, there's a lot of different oses. There's sucralose, there's sugar alcohols, there's all these different things. Anyways, so now let's kind of go in on the seasoning. So we have our gochujang. I'm gonna put a tablespoon or two in here. You don't have to, but it's just, I like it better.
I found gochujang is like super forgiving as well. Like, if a dish calls for gochujang, I can like double the amount of gochujang.
Yeah.
And generally still have a great time.
Yeah, especially if it's like not overly spicy.
Yeah, if it's a mild, Trent would not recommend that. But
with the like super spicy one.
Uh-huh.
I'm gonna put about 2 tablespoons of gochujang into mine. This will give it that nice funky flavor. And then I'm gonna put in 2 tablespoons of this light soy sauce. It's kind of sad. I spilled a lot of stuff everywhere. Don't worry too much about it. I'm just going to clean up my space real quick to help future Ben.
Also, happy St. Patrick's Day to all the Jesuits.
Oh yeah, people like actually celebrate that, right?
I mean,
like no hate. Whoa.
Pinch.
What? Oh, yeah. I'm not wearing green.
I got my green.
I didn't even think about it.
Zach didn't either. I got to pinch him today.
Nice. Cool. So now we have our gochujang, our garlic, and our soy sauce in there. The next thing we're going to need to add is our rice syrup, or sugar, or corn syrup, the sugar element, the sweet. And this is going to provide both a balance for the spiciness. Sweet and spicy is a common pattern that you'll see across cuisines. Not only will it provide that balance, but also sugar provides a nice thickener. So it kind of thickens a sauce. As you know, like simple syrup, it's a little bit thicker than regular water. It's a little bit more viscous, as well as this like nice sheen. So there's going to be this gloss. There's going to be this like glossy sheen over your stew, and that's going to be really nice. You can also achieve that glossy sheen with a little bit of oil. So, whoa. Corey, I'm gonna...
I've never seen this before.
Yeah. Corey, I'm gonna talk about the sugar substitution situation now. So, taking into account what I said about the gochujang being sweet, as well as the fact that a lot of the vegetables we're using are naturally sweet, both onions, carrots, sweet potatoes, and cabbage, and the green onions, and even the peppers all have sugar in them. It's important to make sure that you're not making this dish too sweet. You don't want it to taste like a dessert. You want it to be balanced, a little bit sweet, but like mostly to aid and balance everything.
Can you rank all of those things in terms of sweetness? Because like I would consider cabbage sweet.
Cabbage,
first thought.
Cabbage, yeah, totally. So sweet potato is probably this. Onion and sweet potato are probably the sweetest. Onion is the sweetest, like straight out of the gate, I would say.
Defined by
its sugar content and the types of sugar it has.
Okay.
Onions caramelize really well. They're like 90% water. They also have a ton of sugar in them. More simple sugars that caramelize readily.
They caramelize well because of that all that
because
water?
they have a lot of sugar. Is why they
the water.
caramelize
Because
well.
I know like one of the things you can do if you want to like make an onion look caramelized really fast is like keep adding water to the pan.
Huh? I've never heard that.
It wouldn't actually caramelize it any faster, but I know it like will make it look like that's how you can get onions that look like super caramelized.
Got it, because you're cooking them down.
Because you're just constantly cooking it down.
Yeah.
I don't know if the water has something to do with.
It's more about the sugar content that makes onions so caramelizable.
Okay.
The other thing is sweet potatoes. When you cook a sweet potato for a long time, sweet potato converts a lot of its starches into something called maltose, which is also what's mostly in rice syrup. So once again, the OSE, the maltose, it's a third of the sweetness of table sugar. Carrots are also sweet. There's a good amount of just natural sugar in them. And cabbage is like maybe 3% or less sugar. It's pretty small amount of sugar. But cool. So we have our rice syrup in there. Or sugar or cornstarch. We have our gochujang, we have our soy sauce. Now let's loosen this up a little bit with half a cup of water. I'm just gonna add, I add in chicken broth once again because I just really like adding more flavor where I can. You don't have to use chicken broth, you can just use water. So at this point it's probably pretty liquidy. The next step, after you add in your water and stir it up a bit, is the chili powder. The chili powder, I'm using Tower Red Pepper powder. This is a Korean brand.
Does Busana change her quantities of sugar depending on the types of sugar she has?
It depends. I would say instead of a tablespoon of rice syrup, you could probably just use a tablespoon of sugar. It might be a little bit sweeter. I would use maybe like 2 teaspoons of sugar then. It's better to do a little bit less sugar because later on we can balance more. We can balance it more, we can taste it, we can fine tune. So it's better to add less than more, because adding more, it's not the end of the world, but it's harder to go back. And
could you not just make it more spicy?
No, like it would still have that like intense sweetness that like, so we don't want to go too hard with the sweetness. Trent, there's half a cup of stock in this seasoning sauce, but we have a total of 1 cup of stock because we want to use the other half cup to actually start the boiling and steaming process that'll happen later. So reserve half a cup of either water or stock, use half for the seasoning sauce. Mangchi's recipe calls for 1/3 of a cup of chili flakes. I kind of like to go a little bit more than this. It's up to you. It's up to you to know how spicy your chilies are. Just try them. Just try some chili powder. You're gonna have a better idea of what's going on. Okay. So yeah, sure. These aren't that hot. These are pretty mild. Here. Here. There. Try that. Cool. So Jake's gonna try that. All right. All right. Cool. So I'm putting like about I'm putting about like more than a half cup in there, basically.
Oh. Those aren't spicy at all.
Yeah. It has a subtle spiciness over time that kind of develops. When you put the chili powder in, it'll start creating this kind of like chili paste consistency. Oh, let me turn on this light. Sorry. It'll start creating this like chili paste sort of consistency, this like still runny but a little bit thicker consistency. And at this point, you can kind of adjust. You can taste it a little bit. Like there's nothing raw in this sauce. I mean, besides the garlic and ginger, which are going to be okay right now. I wouldn't recommend storing this in your fridge for like a long time because garlic naturally has a lot of toxins that are like bacteria that develop and create a lot of toxins. So don't do that. But generally this is done and you can use this. So let's set this seasoning sauce aside. And we are going to move on to our next step, which is prepping all of our vegetables. So, oh, and I forgot to say, I would take a large handful of rice cakes and soak them in some cold water. I think I don't actually know why we do this, but I think it's probably to like get a jump on hydrating them a little bit, or just providing a little lubrication so they don't stick to each other. Because rice cakes are very sticky,
and they can be really, really tough.
Yeah, they can.
Like I found that was one of my least favorite things sometimes when I'd be eating like food with rice cakes.
Yeah.
Just like having to gnaw through.
Yeah, that's not good. If they're like undercooked or if they're overcooked.
Yeah,
both of those
so
situations.
Like,
yeah.
There's a nice little
a window.
Valley.
For sure. So yeah, I would just fill up your rice cake bowl, some cold water, and set that aside as well. Cool. So now, thanks. Let's move over. I'm gonna put some of this stuff away. Stuff that I don't need. Yeah, we're done with that. Stuff we want to work with now is all of the vegetables, right? So we have all of these wonderful veggies that are going to give a lot of layers of flavor and sugar to our dish, as I kind of mentioned. We're going to prep all of our vegetables now. So we're going to peel and clean the carrot, onion, and sweet potato. I already have a peeler.
Cool.
Thanks. And then we're gonna take the roots off the onions, wash these. We're gonna clean off the stem after we wash them as well. And as for the cabbage, we're also gonna wash them. We're also gonna wash the cabbage. So let's kind of get that going. Wash all of your produce. It's generally a good idea to wash your produce. If you're like, this is such a big cabbage. If you're trying to lacto ferment something, you don't want to scrub your vegetables with like soap and water. When you lacto ferment things, you have a lot of naturally occurring lactobacillus bacteria that lives on the surface of vegetables and your hands that's the bacteria that's going to be really helping you make your ferment. So you don't want to kill those or wash them away. You want those to be around. That's just something to consider. My cabbage is so big that I don't need to core it. But if you need to core your cabbage, I would recommend cutting it in half along the core, the root, just cutting it in half, and then coming in at a 45-degree angle to make a cut here and make a cut here. And that just helps you like kind of pop out the root or the core. The core is flavorful, but it's a little bit tougher. You're welcome to use it for a vegetable stock, or if you want, you can slice it up and put it in, slice it up kind of thin and put it in there, make sure it cooks. Cool. So
How are people supposed to set the gochujang if they didn't have?
If they didn't have gochujang, you should use a little bit more, just a little bit more sugar element, because the gochujang did supply that. Besides that, it's not that big of a deal. It gives a little bit different of a taste, but that's the main thing. There's also like obviously the chili and the complexity that's missing, but there's plenty of other ingredients in the dish that like provide that.
You shouldn't just add more of the red chili powder?
It's up to people.
Okay.
You don't have to. The original recipe that Mangchi had written had gochujang. She then removed gochujang to make it simpler for people and adjusted. So, yeah, this is like a bastardized version of Mangchi's old recipe.
Which is getting back to the gochujang.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm cutting up all of this stuff.
Sorenka, you're right.
Yeah, it's pretty intense, pretty garlicky.
It smells right.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It smells correct.
So now I'm going to peel. I'm going to peel my onion. I'm going to peel my sweet potato, and I'm going to peel my carrot.
Can you show how much cabbage you used?
Yeah, I used like half a small cabbage. I like using slightly less cabbage than it calls for, but I made the mistake earlier today of using too much cabbage, and now I'm
wary.
I'm wary. Usually when I cut an onion, I cut it down the root, and that just allows you to very easily just slice off the roots. Oh, that's fine.
You need a compost bowl?
No, I got this.
Cool. How long does cabbage stay good for?
Cabbage? I don't know. I wouldn't say anything on that. I probably am a bad cabbage keeper where
I tend to keep my cabbage for so long.
Yeah.
When I get it.
I mean, over time, I'm sure something develops, like both in terms of flavor and in terms of like bacteria.
Well, would it just like lose a lot of its nutrient value as well?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay.
So with this onion, really all you need is half. You don't need the whole onion. You only need half of an onion. So I'm gonna store my other half of the onion in the fridge. I don't care. Use it to cry about something, I guess. Okay, cool. So we have our onion, we have our cabbage ready. We want to peel our carrots now. Actually, Shane, I think this is your peeler. So shout out to Shane for his peeler. I like to go away from myself because I'll just hold it up here and then it'll just kind of be away and I don't need to worry about it. You can also like do this and peel like this. Like if you want, you can kind of peel like that towards yourself. I think you get a little bit more control, but you're just risking your fingers a little bit more. It's up to you with what you feel comfortable with. I like rotating and going kind of quick away from myself. I can be a little more reckless. Yeah. Yeah, cabbage stuff, it's like, I would use half of a medium cabbage for this dish. I'm using slightly less than that. God damn. Cool, that's cleaned enough. I'm not like super perfectionist about peeling my vegetables. I'm not gonna, with this stuff, I'm not gonna be hurt if I eat the peels. Maybe sweet potato peel's a little bit toxic, I'm not sure, but it's probably fine. Taro root though is actually toxic, and I wouldn't just eat the peel on that. Cool. And then I'm going to just slice off the ends of both carrot and the sweet potato. Just make sure that it's that tough sort of end of the root isn't getting in my way. Great. So now we have our peppers and our green onions left. We can just wash these and clean them. So for these green onions, I like to use the green part for more of a garnish, and the white part, the aromatic part, it's much more, I guess it's more aromatic and more flavorful for the sort of base flavor. So I'm gonna mix this in with my onion later. For the chilies, I'm just gonna cut off the ends, just the end. If you want your chili less spicy, I'm gonna do this as an example. If you want your chili less spicy, I'm using jalapenos. You can make another cut on the end. That gives you a stable working surface, right? That's important. It's why we cut an onion in half and lay it on its side. It's why we maybe, yeah, you'll see. So we have this jalapeno. We can do 4 cuts just along the membrane. We can do 3 actually, even. Just kind of along the seed and the membrane. And you can just kind of boom, like that. If you have a little bit left over, you can kind of, it's fine. You can kind of like, you can kind of come in here and like cut it off if you want, but it's fine. I actually like the spicy, so I'm keeping it. But just in case you wanted to know how to remove it easily. So now let's start prepping everything. Get some plates out, really. You wanna get some plates out, some surfaces for you to put your stuff that's already prepped. That's important for organizing your workspace, giving yourself space and time. So I'm gonna take out. Sorry everyone. I'm gonna take out a couple of plates. I'm gonna start with the peppers. These peppers are already pretty chopped, so I'm just gonna chop these guys like this. But for these, I like rounds.
When we had this a couple days ago, I went, these jalapenos aren't that spicy.
Yeah.
They were not jalapenos.
Oh, they weren't. They weren't?
I guess.
Yeah.
Are those jalapenos?
Yeah.
Oh, those were jalapenos?
Yeah.
Oh, never mind.
Yeah.
I thought they were just chilies.
No, they're jalapenos. So we have our jalapenos done, or whatever green chili. The jalapeno is not a traditional chili for this. Usually it's a green Korean chili. I wasn't able to find those, so I went with the jalapeno.
I thought we did green Korean chilies.
No, we didn't.
I thought they were jalapenos?
Yeah, we didn't.
Got it.
Yeah. You want to keep these all separate because we're going to be layering them on. So that's the reason why we're keeping them separate. With the whites of the scallion, I like doing a diagonal cut. Once again, using my little claw technique, but don't worry about it. Just don't cut your finger off like I almost did. I'm doing these. These are kind of like, you can kind of see, they're like diagonal, I guess. It's not really focused, but whatever. Those are diagonal cut. That's nice. And then let's cut the onion. So we have our onion. J. Kenji Lopez Alt is this chef who I admire, and he just drops gems constantly. But he wrote an article, I think, all about how you can get the most consistent onion slices, and they did some like geometry on it, and like, yeah, you have to aim for here, so it's like, yeah, you like cut like here, and like you're like cutting down, but I don't care. I'm just cutting pretty broad, like about maybe inch or half inch slices, and then I'm breaking them up later. So that's how we're prepping the onions. Pretty simple. It'll cook down. It'll really cook down. Lusana asked, how many green Korean chilies? Are they stronger or about the same spiciness as green chilies? So it depends on which green chilies I guess you're relating them to. From what I understand, Korean green chilies aren't that spicy. They're probably around the spiciness of maybe like an Anaheim. Oh, okay, yeah. So green chili peppers, the ones that are commonly seen in Korean cuisine, are at 1500 Scoville heat units. And we can talk about how Scoville heat units doesn't accurately represent or capture that metric. But jalapenos are a little bit spicier. I like to use 2 jalapenos. I also like spicy food. I'm pretty tolerant of it. It's kind of up to you to know where you're at with that. Green Korean chilies are probably about as spicy as like Tabasco or something like that. So if that's any reference point, but it's always like, honestly, just taste it. Like, I know it seems kind of messed up to like bite into a chili, but if you're in doubt, like actually tasting it earlier you'll be less sorry later, for yourself later, I guess. So cool. So we cut up our onions. We cut up our peppers. I like to cut up the green onions to be garnish, and I just kind of get a bunch of them. I line them up, and I start doing the same tilting technique. It's good to have your green onions. I think I like them. It's not good to have them. I like them thinner. If you like the texture of larger green onion slices, more power to you. We just have a disagreement. We're just gonna have to figure this out outside, yeah. Cool. So now we have a bunch of green onions all prepped. Now we're gonna move on to our cabbage. I'm gonna take a second. Lusana, I think jalapenos are like, I think they're like 8,000 Scoville units or something. Let me check. Scoville. So they're about 100 to 8,000 Scoville scale. They're definitely like at least double the heat of a Korean green chili pepper, and probably more. Usually more. Once again, I chopped up these green onions. I have this nice little tray, this nice little container for myself. Just helps me stay organized, you know? Helps my workspace. I don't have to like fumble around. You can very easily wash these things off with a little light soap and water after. It's just a bunch of veggies. Cool. Now let's cut up the cabbage. So, like I told you all, I have less cabbage than other people. So just keep that in mind. I'm gonna make a few cuts, not too many. So I'm gonna make probably 1 or 2 cuts lengthwise like this, because I like my cabbage pieces to be pretty big. And then towards the core, there's gonna be a little bit more thick and tough flesh on the cabbage. I'm just gonna cut it a little bit smaller then, because it's gonna take longer to cook if I don't do that. So I'm gonna make like 1 cut here, and then I'm gonna kind of make a bigger cut here, and then the biggest cut there. And And you're gonna kind of want to, yeah, press it down a bit and like release all those layers of cabbage from each other. This is gonna serve as the base of our dish, the cabbage. It absorbs a lot of flavors. It has a little bit of natural sugar, but it also provides that like pretty distinct cabbage flavor that actually intensifies with time. So if you overcook your cabbage and your house smells like cabbage, that's, well, you know why, because you overcooked it. Cool. So now we have our cabbage done. Time to go on to the carrot and the sweet potato. So carrots have a solid amount of sugar, not as much starch though as a sweet potato. So sweet potato, less starch, or sorry, sweet potato, more starch. Carrot, less starch. Sweet potato, less natural sugar straight up. Carrot, more natural sugar from what I understand. And more water in this. Starch, when you cook starch, like I was saying earlier, it does this thing called gelatinizes. Basically, starch turns into gel with time and water and heat. And this also creates the sugar over time. There's an enzyme in sweet potato that breaks that starch down into maltose. And that's where you get those natural sugar, because there's something naturally occurring in sweet potatoes that breaks it down. So the way I'm going to do this first, before just like cutting into it, you can tell it's kind of unstable, right? It's rolling. And that's not really good for me to have precise cuts, because I might like, you know, whatever, I might hurt myself again. So what I like to do is I like to find the flattest edge, and I like to cut as flat as possible of an edge on one side of the sweet potato and on the carrot, anything cylindrical that can afford it. So I put this down now. Now this is like super stable. It's not rolling at all. It's like barely rolling. So now I can make my cuts. And also, if you want, you can make these into smaller pieces. Like you can make another lengthwise cut like this, or a cut like this. It's up to you. The smaller you cut your pieces, the faster they're going to cook. Always understand that. The smaller volume, as well as, we can talk about surface area another time. So I'm going to come at this and cut about like 1/4 inch pieces on a diagonal. I just like the diagonal. I like the shape. I like the amount of surface area it provides for a lot of saucy goodness.
So you're not just being pretentious?
No. Yeah, if you think about like cutting here versus cutting here, the hypotenuse of that right triangle is going to be, you know, this is longer than just this. So you just end up creating a lot more surface area, and it's more of an aesthetic thing for sure, but like it's also a surface area thing. Cool. So my sweet potatoes are done now. Some of these pieces are pretty big. It's fine. They'll cook. But the sweet potato is actually the thing that will take the longest to cook. And so the sweet potato is going to be our sort of indicator. If you think about all your ingredients, the sweet potato is the indicator that the dish is done. And we'll talk about that more when the sweet potato is cooking. Next, I'm going to do the carrot. Just getting a little bit more peel off. Same thing. I want to make that stable cut, and that's just, you know, just for me, just for ergonomics. So something I touched a little bit on, but haven't talked a lot about, is color and color contrast. So this dish, when it's raw, looks super vibrant, super beautiful, contrasting colors. It's just, I love looking at this dish before it cooks. It looks beautiful. The orange of the carrot, the red of the chili sauce, the green from the perilla, the peppers, and the like light green and yellow of the cabbage and onions. Like, I'm a fan of the color. I really like the color. Over time when you cook this thing, it's gonna kind of meld. All those colors are gonna blend a little bit. A lot of carrot colors are gonna turn like from orange to more of a yellow. Those reds in the chili are gonna get mixed with greens in the peppers. A lot's gonna happen with the color. It's gonna turn more of like an orange reddish brown color, and that's just because there are some compounds in these vegetables that will dissolve into fat. There are others that will dissolve into water, and there are some that won't dissolve at all, that they'll just stay there. So that's something to keep in mind. It's cool to have different colors. It's more appetizing. That's why we put the green onion on it at the end. It makes it pop, and it makes you like a lot more hungry. Cool. So I'm gonna let you guys catch up on the sweet potato and carrot chopping situation. Sorry this is taking a little bit longer than usual, but hopefully it's been useful for you. Cool. So we're kind of getting there. We're almost there. So we have all of our stuff here now. I'm going to start layering. I'm going to start layering all of my ingredients. So the idea with this dish is that we're going to layer everything in one pot. And this is, I think, more of, Mang Chi kind of has this method. She has a lot of one-pan dishes that make it easier, and I'm just kind of relaying that. But basically, we're going to layer everything in this dish, and we're going to let it all cook together. Sarenka asked, did you do 1 carrot or 2? I did just half a carrot, actually, but it was a huge carrot. So, I would say 1 carrot. It's kind of up to you. If you really like carrots and you're okay with a little bit more of that carrot flavor and that sweetness, go for it. If you really like onions, go for more onions. I want people to feel comfortable experimenting and trying things that they prefer, right? Knowing that it's going to be okay. You're not going to totally mess it up. It'll be pretty nice. Cool. So let's start layering our dish. We're first going to go in with cabbage. The reason I think we're going into cabbage first, so Mang Chi originally, again, came up with this layering scheme, and I'm sure it's elsewhere in the Korean cooking world. But my thought about it is, I think the reason why cabbage is on the bottom, and then onion, and then pepper, and then carrots, whatever the sort of order is because we're trying to get a bunch of water out of these vegetables. And cabbage and onion are a lot of water, mostly water. And most of these vegetables are mostly water, but these especially will leach out a lot of water and make sure that we're not going to burn our dish. That's important. We're also going to put in this, extra half cup of water to kind of kickstart things and also make sure that we're not burning our dish. So cabbage in first, onions in next. Just kind of break them up a bit. I like to. You don't have to. It's all going to cook anyways. Just breaking up my onion, spreading it everywhere. Also, something I want to try. So I have a Zoom meeting that I actually want to invite you all into, both to eat, but also to ask me questions. So I'm not going to be actively listening to it. I need to have it on mute. But if you have a question to ask, you can pop it in the chat and just say I have a question to ask on Zoom or whatever. And then I want to actually bring you up onto the screen, if that's cool, to ask your question and show us your food, show us kind of your progress, where you're at, and let us know like what you need help with. So I'm going to pop this link into the chat. You can hop in that Zoom meeting. I'm not going to be listening once again, but I am going to be reading the chat. So you're welcome to join me in there. Cool. While you all are doing that, if you're hopping into the Zoom call, I am going to continue layering everything. Corey, I'll get to that. I will let you know when we'll put in kimchi. And the hint is that it'll be near the end. So right now we're still layering the vegetables. So let's put in the green onions as well. Put all the green onions in, just kind of sprinkle them around. You know, you're going to stir this up later, so this is more for kind of presentation. And then after that, we're going to put in the carrot. So now you have this like amazing color contrast and pop. And you know, if you want to get fancy with it, you know, you can point everything inwards and make it like cool and like slick, and you know, you can be cool and like get like likes on your Instagram posts and stuff. The color just really is what matters. You're welcome to make whatever pattern or art you want. If you want to make a smiley face, I would really appreciate that. Yeah, cool. So that's in. Now we're gonna do the green peppers, right? I'm gonna throw these in there. Maybe I'll kind of keep going with this theme here of excessive, over the top, unnecessary. You know, good stuff. Cool. So now our peppers are in. The next thing we want to put in is the sweet potato. This is kind of going to ruin my beautiful array, but I don't actually care. So all of that work was for nothing. And then you have a choice right now. You've had a lot of choices, I mean, throughout this dish, but you have a choice right now. You can either put in the rice cakes right now, or you can wait until like 5 minutes until this whole dish is done cooking. I'm kind of curious for everybody, like what they think will happen differently for rice cakes that are put in now versus rice cakes that are put in later. Just kind of a open question, kind of a, not a pop quiz, just like something to think about. Lusana, you'll put those in a second. Yeah, just hold on a bit. So now that we have all of our vegetables in, sort of the base of our veggies, we're going to then put the meat in. But first, if you have any herbs, so either basil or perilla leaves is the OG, get that ready, wash that. I'm gonna wash my perilla leaves right now. And we're gonna put in those herbs. Gotta do some quality control over here. Some of these aren't looking so hot. If it's like brown or discolored, just like remove that part. Use the rest, don't waste it. Cool. So Meredith, yes. So that's definitely one of them. If it's like, so back to the sort of rice cake question. If a rice cake is long and like a tube and thicker, it is going to depend on that shape. The thin discs are going to cook much more quickly than the long, thicker tubes. That's definitely one element to it. So what I like to do with these shiso leaves, like this, or not shiso, perilla. Well, it's a specific type of perilla. Perilla is like a genus of herb plant that's used across Korea, Japan, Vietnam, other cuisines as well. And basically, people call it sesame leaf. It's unrelated to sesame. Don't know why people call it that, but that's something to learn for another day. So I put down my perilla leaves in this kind of beautiful flowering type pattern, just because that looks cool. And now is when we put either our mushrooms, tofu, or chicken in, when we put our marinated chicken in. So this chicken is just going to go right into the center. I like to put it right in the center for kind of presentation purposes. And this is like, we're almost at the time that like is perfect for pictures, because this stuff looks good. The next thing we want to do is we want to put the seasoning sauce over all of this. Really, I just put it in the middle, right? And once again, feel free, if you want to ask a question on Zoom and be a star for a second, let me know. I'll start sharing that stream. But for now, we're going to put the seasoning sauce in on top of the chicken or mushrooms or tofu. Just kind of let it sit atop everything, and it'll kind of slowly pour down and out. And you can kind of, if you want, you can kind of spread it around. Honestly, it's probably better to do that because we are going to be covering this. And in order to cover it, like without getting the entire top sticky, I think it's important to just spread out the sauce a little bit so you can kind of, kind of flatten it out a bit. Just make sure it's a little bit distributed. Just make sure that sauce is a little bit decentralized. Cool. So now at this point, you can choose to put in the thin ones. I'm going to kind of spoil that riddle, I guess, and just say I'm not going to put my rice cakes in right now. I'm going to put it in 5 minutes before it ends because I have the thin ones, and these overcook pretty easily. When I first was testing this recipe, putting these in and then stirring it up actually resulted in a lot of these sticking to the bottom of the pan. There's not that much oil in this dish at first, and there's an opportunity for these things are just super sticky. So I would suggest waiting until the last 5 minutes of the cooking time. So at this point, we're good to go. We're going to now put our entire pan, along with some, that half cup of water that we've reserved. We're going to put this on high heat. So let's move over to the cooktop situation. Whoa! Whoa! Cool. We're over at the cooktop now. So our dish is going to go here. We're going to go on high heat. And as we do that, so I'm turning my pan on high. I have a lid around. If you don't have a lid, you can use, foil. You can use a tray, like a baking tray. It's kind of up to you, but you definitely want to cover this. Lusana, you totally can replace sweet potatoes with regular potatoes. Just know that there will be a little bit less sweetness and the texture will be slightly different. Try to find a regular potato with a similar sort of starch makeup as sweet potato. That'll help make sure you have the same textural element or a similar textural element, and then make sure you, so once it's on high, sorry, one sec. Once it's on high, put your half cup of water into the bottom. There'll be plenty of water. I know it doesn't look like it, but a lot of the water is going to come out of those vegetables, and you're really going to be like, you're going to be impressed. So back to your point, make sure that once again, it's up to you. These are your decisions. If you want it to be a little bit more sweet, because that sweet potato does kind of bring a lot of that sweetness, you are welcome to add a little bit more sugar in the sugar step of the seasoning sauce, or you can just leave it. I think it's totally fine to put just potato in there. However, it does result in a different dish. And that's another thing I kind of wanted to make a point about. This flavor base, this combination of seasonings can work with any protein and any vegetable, really. Like, there are probably a few that it doesn't work with, but I'm willing to say most things are going to be delicious with this sauce on it. It's got garlic, it's got ginger, it's got soy sauce, it's got gochujang, it's got chili flakes. It's just good. Like, it's going to be good. It's sweet, it's savory, it's going to be good. So if you ever wanted to, make something else, maybe you wanted to make some shrimp, and maybe in your fridge you have some shrimp, you have some zucchini, and you have some broccoli, and you have a potato on the shelf. Just do this method. You've done it once, so you can do it again. Cool, so I'm going to cover this now. We're going to cover that until it comes to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, we're going to lower the heat, and we're going to mix it up a bit. Oh, you're right. Sarenka had a really good point that I totally forgot the kimchi. So my bad. It's all good. We can just chop up the kimchi now. Let's take take a tablespoon or two of kimchi, depending on how much kimchi you like, and chop it up. I like to use a different cutting board, again, for kimchi, because kimchi really, really, really has a lot of red pigments in it that will stain your cutting board. Another trick that I recently learned that I want to test is this guy, Nick Sharma. Nick Sharma wrote this book called The Flavor Equation, and he talks a lot about this sort of science of cooking, and he's a molecular biologist. And he talks about how a lot of the color compounds in beets specifically, and I'm not sure, that's why I'm not sure about in kimchi and in chili peppers, but in beets are water soluble. And so when you put something wet on your cutting board, on your wooden cutting board, it's going to absorb that. However, if you put beets on a cutting board coated in oil, that beet stain isn't going to be as severe, and it's not going to affect your wood cutting board as much. So I'm going to actually just try that right now. I'm just going to take a little bit of canola oil, and I'm going to rub it on my plastic cutting board. And I'm just going to roughly chop some kimchi and see if it stains or not. Some live experimentation. So I'm putting about a handful of kimchi in. It's kind of up to you how much kimchi you want. It's all up to you. Chopping it up a bit. Just a bit though. I still like chunks. Cool. So let's throw our kimchi into this. And let me rinse this off, and I'll kind of give you a close-up of the result of my experiment. So most of it came off, but honestly, there's still a good amount of like stain on it. So maybe some of the color compounds in kimchi are actually fat soluble, and maybe that didn't help us at all. Not sure. So now, if your pan is at a boil at this point, you should turn it down to medium. So I'm going to look at mine. Mine looks to be like the water is boiling. So now I'm going to stir it up a bit. I'm going to stir it up with a wooden spoon. And hold on one second. Cool. So I'm just I'm getting, what really I want to do is I want to push the sweet potatoes and the chicken further to the bottom of the pan, because those things are going to take the longest to cook. And I want to make sure that the sauce is evenly distributed throughout. If it doesn't look like there's enough water, it's okay. It will come with time. Start getting this kind of pretty distribution of delicious sauce everywhere and some of that water. So something else here. Now we're going to turn it down to medium. So we got it to boil, and now we got to chill. We don't want to burn it. We want to now kind of a little bit more slowly and in a more controlled way. We want to cook everything else. So now that it's up to heat, we're gonna just push everything down as much as we can, but if not, it's all good. And we're gonna cover this, and we're gonna cook it on medium. So now this is cooking on medium. This is gonna take about 15 to 20 minutes, and every so often we're gonna be, we're just gonna be like adjusting and stirring everything together. At this point, this is a sort of a downtime, so I would suggest starting to put away some things. Don't necessarily clean everything up yet. We still have some chopping to do for the mozzarella later, but start putting away some stuff at this point. Put away your rice cakes, put away your gochujang, put away your chili powder. Rinse off any plates that you used, wash any plates that you used, put them to dry. Doing this just makes it a lot less stressful.
That's why we wait.
Yeah, I'm not even done with mine. I'm down though. This is kind of some downtime so you all can not get bombarded by my constant barrage of words. If you have any questions, please, once again, feel free to ask.
This isn't going.
What?
This camera isn't going.
It's not. Really?
No.
Looks like it is.
No, I meant the one on your face.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Cool.
Got it. Yeah. Cool. So while everything's cooking, we can kind of hang out. This is a good time for us to clean up, but also ask me any questions you have. So if you're curious about anything, if you want me to just blabber about starches turning into maltose or disodium inoscienate, let me know. But ask me any questions you have, and I'll be listening for them. I'm going to be cleaning up as well.
Wait for the dishwasher?
Yeah. It's fine.
What else are we chopping?
We're chopping mozzarella.
Oh.
Lily, I can tell you all about cheese. So, Lily asked why we couldn't find block mozzarella. Why not fresh? Okay, yeah, that's looking really good. So after I answer this question, we can stir the stir fry a little bit more, the braise, I guess. So fresh mozzarella and the like kind of lower quality, less fresh, a little bit drier mozzarella is basically the way the proteins behave is different between those two. You want a cheese that has a nice stringiness to it, and there's a point at which there's a melting point, and like you get to this like sort of peak, like the optimal point of stringiness where you can get like the longest strands of protein basically. It's not too hot and it's not too cold, and from what I understand, the stringy mozzarella, like string mozzarella, like lower hydration, does a pretty good job of achieving that texture. The fresh mozzarella, actually, let me just actually straight up look this up. I can tell you why more directly. There's this crazy cool book called On Food and Cooking by Harold McGee, and I've been learning so much about food from it. This dude is like, it's a lot of fundamental knowledge, and he talks about something like this. So let me get you the exact answer, because I sort of know this answer, but not as well as this guy. So all right, I have found something. not to say, oh, sorry. Let's stir this. Let's definitely stir our stuff. Yeah, because you might have a little bit sticking on the bottom. Try to bring that off the bottom. There's plenty of liquid to do that, so don't worry too much if it's slightly sticking. The worst that happens here is you have slightly caramelized taste, and the worst is like some slight bitterness happens from burning. But if you feel like there's not enough water, just make sure to keep stirring it. Just keep stirring and you'll be good. I'm going to turn down my heat a little bit because I have a pretty wide, shallow pan, and a lot of the moisture seems to be evaporating. Cool. So, Lily, if that answers your question, that's why the two cheeses behave differently. Oh, can they not hear me? Oh, wow. No, when I was reading from the book, I don't think anyone heard anything, actually. Sorry, Lily. Let me go into why cheeses have different stringiness. Sorry about that. So I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm pretty sure I just talked a bunch and you just saw a book passage and you didn't hear me talking at all. That's what I'm assuming. So the main point is there are these chains of casein proteins that make a ropey, stringy cheese. How well those casein proteins cross-link is dependent on moisture, fat, acidity, and salt content. High moisture, high fat, and high salt, and high acid environments are all bad for stringiness. Fresh mozzarella is very high in fat and in moisture. So it doesn't have a stringy texture, whereas a block of mozzarella like this is a little bit lower hydration and might even be a little bit lower fat. And that aids in the cross-linking of those chains, those protein chains, and it can create those long, stringy ropes of mozzarella. And that's why. So it's super interesting. It's like casein proteins and acid and enzymes. If like aged cheeses have enzymes that ripen the cheese, and they actually cut those links kind of shorter. So it's harder for cheese to create those strings because those casein proteins are a little bit snipped in the bud. Or something like that. Okay, so at this point, we're kind of getting towards the end of our cook time. I'm gonna stir my dish a little bit. It's not sticking as much. It's pretty moist. I'm gonna add a little bit more water in mine just to make sure it's loosened up a bit. But now we're gonna go in with the rice cakes. I'm just dotting a little bit of water. I put like a 1/4 cup of water in there. Yeah. So I'm gonna drain my rice cakes now. Drain the rice cakes of all of that cold water. And we're gonna toss those in, and we are going to mix them throughout. So at this point, we just want to make sure that we're incorporating all of the rice cakes into the liquid. It smells like super strong, gingery, delicious. Yeah, that's good stuff. So like, make sure to get the rice cakes in there. Make sure to get them in the sort of like saucy brothy sauce. It's more of a saucy broth, I'd say. And the technique we just used. Sorry about that, everyone. Minor technical issue. My phone ran out of battery, but we're good now. So while I'm getting my phone set up back up and running, I think you all can hear me now. I went dark for a second there, but at this point, hopefully your rice cakes are stirred in, and everything is kind of melding nicely together. I'm gonna get my phone set up back on and we can start cutting the mozzarella. If you wanna go ahead and just chop up the mozzarella, that's up to you. All right, I think we're back in business. Yeah. I think you can. Oh, cool. I think you guys can hear me now. I think everyone can hear me. So now we're gonna chop up some mozzarella. I'm gonna rinse off my knife real quick, just cause you don't have to, but I'm going to. I'm just gonna. You can either grate this mozzarella or you can chop it up into pieces. It's really kind of up to you. Grating it helps it melt down faster. But it doesn't matter because it'll probably melt down regardless. So I'm just gonna go in here and just kind of thinly slice it. So kind of while I'm cutting this mozzarella, I can kind of talk about what we were doing, why we're doing it. I want to recap and kind of bring attention back to the whys of this dish. So the main concepts that we're focusing on are the balance, both texturally and in terms of flavor. There's a lot of spice. There's also a lot of things to round out that spice. There's sugar, kind of directly counterbalances it. There's the mozzarella and the casein proteins that help dampen the spice or temper the spice a little bit. There's also a lot of different savory notes. There's the MSG from the soy sauce and the gochujang. There's the natural sweetness, kind of the all of the different vegetables with their natural sugars in them. That all aid in making this a well-rounded dish. Then there's the textural contrast, which is the kind of soft and tender sweet potato and carrot. But it's still got a bite to it, you know. There's a little bit of that tender onion and cabbage. There's the meaty, almost chewy sometimes, chicken thighs, and there's the stringy mozzarella cheese. So now I'm kind of going in here and just chopping up the mozzarella. This is equivalent of like a really, just like shredding it, but I can just chop it. At this point, our rice cakes are going to be done. Everything is going to be done. The sole purpose of this next step will be to create a mozzarella cheese well that you can dip into. You'll see what I'm talking about in a second. Cool, so I'm running pretty low on battery here, but I'm gonna turn down my heat a little bit, and I'm gonna get the camera over there. I'm gonna kind of just go for it here. So right now we have this delicious bubbling pot of goodness, right? We want to take our mozzarella cheese and we want to make a well. We want to create a little well that we can dip all of our ingredients into as we eat this. That's going to be really, really fun, honestly. This dish is it's communal, it's fun. You're going to be interacting with it. It's going to make it a lot more gratifying to eat. And also, it's just going to taste really good. So what I'm going to do right now is what usually you would see is a cast iron pan that has like a cheese well attached to it on the outside, which is awesome, but I don't have that. What I'm going to do instead is I'm going to move some things aside. Just move some things aside over here. Just like this. And I'm going to just kind of put my cheese down into this well. If you care about the colors, you can not do what I'm doing, but it's all going to kind of mix in eventually anyways. If you want, you can also kind of bury some of it, you know. It's good. It's all good stuff. So all of our ingredients are cooked at this point, and now we can just cover this, and all that cheese is going to melt down nicely. Almost like steam the cheese a bit. So at this point, we're done and kind of ready to eat it. I'm going to personally prep my I'm going to prep my lettuce because I like having a bite of lettuce to eat. But that's kind of up to you. You don't have to have the lettuce. Yeah, so kind of up to you. I'm going to do that. Also, if you want right now, like the cheese is melting, you can kind of, yeah, you can start drinking. Definitely crack a beer. Crack a cocktail, crack some soju. The other important element of this recipe is actually the drinks. I know not everybody drinks alcohol, but in Korean culture, drinking alcohol is pretty. I don't know. It's a pretty core part of socializing a lot of times, especially in certain work environments and with students. Shane, you can lower the heat and basically lower the heat and let it just kind of steam and chill out. You can also just turn it off. By the time you get to it, it'll probably be melted. My cheese is like starting to melt and the heat is still on low. So I like keeping the heat on a little bit, but you don't want to burn it. But anyways, the drink is a very important part of this. Dak-galbi is usually eaten with drinks. It's, as I said earlier, it's anju. It's a type of food that you eat with alcohol. So what we have here is we have, here, let me get you the kind of everything you need. So what you have here is you have some beer. right? You have about 4 parts beer, and you're going to do about 1 part soju. So this is a really, really popular brand. Really, like, I don't know, chorom. Yeah. So this is a pretty popular brand. It's pretty delicious. This is actually the original, which is 17% alcohol. There's a stronger one that's 20% alcohol, and then there's a slightly lighter one that's like 14% alcohol, I think. You can get the fruit ones as well. Some people like grapefruit mixed into beer. I personally don't. I just like straight up soju. Like, this is just 17%. And this is like, this mixture, it's called Somaek. So it's soju and maekju. Maekju is beer, soju is soju. So Somaek, it's a combination word. So I'm going to put in like about 1 to 4. You know, some people go, this sort of like blackout ratio is 5 to 5. So you go like 5 little cups of little soju shots of soju and 5 little soju shots of beer, and that'll definitely mess you up if you drink enough of those. I'm gonna kind of come over here really quick for a reveal. You all will see this beautiful pot, and so my cheese is pretty melted now. As you can see, it's pretty melted down here. And now I'm just going to top it with some scallions. Right, and this just makes the colors really kind of pop. I don't think this is traditional. This is what I like to do. Cool. So that's it. I mean, definitely get some pictures of that. Like, so one thing I want to make sure of is that I see what you all are cooking. I'm super excited and interested to see like what you're making. This is super gratifying to me. So if you could, I would love if you put on Instagram, like on your story, on a post, whatever, it doesn't matter. Tag me at Ben Imedali, Ben_Imedali, and also a few hashtags if you want. So I have stay thick, thick cooking, and yeah, and just show me what you guys made. I'm super excited to see like everyone's and how it turned out. I mean, that's the dish, right? We have this delicious, amazing, magnificent dish, and at this point we're going to be drinking and eating. You're welcome to join for drinks and food. I think we're going to be just chilling in that Zoom call. I'm going to once again plug the Zoom link, and take your thing off of the heat. The cheese should be melted. Get some chopsticks or some forks, whatever you want to eat with. Get a couple of bowls for everyone, for each person, and pour some drinks, crack some brews, and make some somaek. And let's chill out. Let's drink a little bit too much, maybe. So yeah, cheers to everyone. You can go to the Zoom link. I'll be chilling in there with Jake and Sarenka and whoever else is coming through. And just to kind of recap, you guys, everyone did it. We did it. You made this. I don't know. I think that's great. It's, it might have seemed intimidating at first or difficult, but we're done now. We've cooked it, and there's one last step to do. And that's an always important step in this sort of thing, is to taste your food. So you've cooked it and you're at the end, and you need to season it to taste. So at this point, I'm just taking this little spoon, and I'm just going to taste it, see if it needs anything. If it's a little bit too spicy maybe, or not sweet enough, I'm going to add a little bit of sugar. If it's not salty enough, I'm going to add a little bit of salt. If it's too salty, I'm going to add a little bit of water. And I'm going to try to balance out that a bit. But if you're eating it with like lettuce, let's say, that also helps to balance the saltiness. So yeah, so mine needs a little bit more salt, just a little bit. Cool. Awesome. Amazing. Everyone who wants to eat with us, please hop in the Zoom. I appreciate all of you a lot. This has been super fun. Next week, as kind of a little teaser, we're talking about banh mi. So banh mi is classic Vietnamese bread. It's actually the bread that banh mi refers to, and it's definitely its own baguette, its own sort of thing. And I've been exploring and doing a lot of research into it, and I think there's a lot of interesting stuff that all of you will really enjoy. And hopefully I'll see you next week. So thanks again for coming. If you want, you can join us in the Zoom. If you need the Zoom link, just like hit me up on Facebook or Instagram. I'll reply. I'll send you the Zoom link. But yeah, dig in. Enjoy. Bon appetit. And cheers.